Hi, Anna. Welcome to the Intentional Entrepreneur Podcast. Great to have you.
Thanks, Lauren. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, awesome. So today we are going to be talking all about your subconscious and how your mind might be interfering with your goals. A lot of the time I speak with my clients and they'll tell me things like, I really want to achieve this goal. I would like to become more organized. I would like to be able to work less, but I just can't seem to do it, even though I know what to do. So I am really excited to talk with you, Anna, today, because I think you can give us a lot of insight as to what might be getting in the way for us when we're setting these kinds of goals.
Absolutely. And it really comes from the fact that I used to think like that.
Yeah.
And I actually was coaching people in a different business many years ago, where I realized that it didn't matter how much strategy I could teach someone, that if they didn't, at their core, believe in their ability to achieve it, which ultimately means believe in themselves, that they were
Mm-hmm.
never going to implement that strategy. And so
Yeah.
that's when I went down the path of learning about subconscious reprogramming and knew this was exactly what my clients needed in order to get over those mindset humps that were holding them back. And ever since I've implemented that, the results that people are getting in their business is substantially higher than ever before.
So cool. So cool. Tell us, yeah, how about we start there, Anna? Tell us a little bit about who you are and who you help.
So I am a mindset coach for entrepreneurs, and I work with people who have gotten into this entrepreneurial space, but really are, they're experts in what their trade is, whether that's an acupuncturist or whether that is a dog trainer, someone who is really good at what they do, and they're trying to create a business out of it. But what kind of gets us stuck is that we think we're supposed to be experts in all things business. And there's so many things from our pasts that come along with us into that space that we really get stuck in growing our businesses because of those mindset limitations. And what I do is help them uncover those blocks and then figure out how to get rid of them and then put supportive thoughts. Really, it's reprogramming your mind to believing whatever you want is possible. And that's what I do.
Awesome. So, so cool. I love it. We are definitely going to dive into, if you are listening, how you can start to uncover. You might have never heard of the idea of a limiting belief or a subconscious block, or maybe you have before and you want to learn how to get rid of them or spot new ones. We're going to be diving into that a little bit later on in this interview. But how about what I always love to ask guests, Anna, a little bit about how they got started, because I think it really brings that kind of more connected element for us. So I would love to hear, how did you kind of get involved in that? Like, you talked to us a little bit at the beginning about how you saw that your clients really needed it and there was a missing piece, but I'd love to hear a little bit about how you got started in the mindset space and what kind of led you there.
So I've always been the straight A student, high
Mm-hmm.
achiever, all of those things where I knew I could get a job done for anybody else. But then when I was in my own business and trying to put myself out there, which meant being on social media, putting out offers to potential clients, doing all sorts of different things, I would freeze. And
Mm-hmm.
this was so fascinating because when I was doing that in my traditional job setting years ago, I didn't have that same block. And when I was trying to do these things in my entrepreneurial life, I knew the blocks were there, but I couldn't figure out how to get past them. And it was in that journey of realizing that I needed to focus on my mindset that I uncovered or learned about subconscious reprogramming specifically, because there's a lot of different modalities and ways to work on your mindset, things like meditation and visualization, and all of them come together and are really helpful. But I am a person who wants to get things done right the first time. And it was really fascinating to me to understand how the mind works. And a lot of this is based in neurolinguistic programming and how the brain really works. So the scientific part of this was so fascinating to me because I liked having sort of that tangible root, but
Mhm.
then seeing how the different processes that I use to do subconscious reprogramming, it wasn't just a temporary fix. It truly was creating new neural pathways, these new connections in my brain so that my default thoughts were actually different.
Mhm.
And I started that because I was wanting to grow a business online and take my business from local into the online space. And something about it just was terrifying me. And when I started doing the subconscious reprogramming work, as just learning how to do that for my clients, I actually did it for myself as well. And that was when everything started to quantum leap and just really move faster for me in my business because I was able to reprogram how my mind was thinking on default.
So cool. And I think I loved what you said about that it didn't affect you so much when you were in your corporate life. Because when I think about if you're just new to if you're new to the podcast, I used to be a teacher before I became an entrepreneur. I never really had those thoughts of like, oh, what if this isn't good enough? Or what if I'm not a good enough teacher? I just did the things and I always had a lot of confidence that I knew I could teach well. I never had that kind of like self-doubt or questioning. So it's interesting that you pointed out that it wasn't for you too, like that when you were working with somebody else as an employee, it didn't really hit you, but when you became an entrepreneur, it was a whole other level.
Absolutely. And the important part to think about this is actually just how our subconscious minds are built, right? In the environments and the settings that we're in at different seasons of our lives, we think that a certain way of being and acting and behaving is the right way. And
Mm-hmm.
so through our education, going to school and then going into jobs, we've been taught to that we're looking towards a boss or somebody else maybe to give us a direction to go or to
Yeah.
improve what we're trying to do. And that looks different as an entrepreneur. And most of us, if you switch from that traditional job setting into a entrepreneurial role, we don't automatically just think differently. And that's
Mm-hmm.
where this type of work is so important because we may know now where we own our companies and we own the business that we do, but our subconscious mind, which is running 95% of the show, of all the thoughts, beliefs, everything that's happening in your brain, that started being built when you were a child and
Mm-hmm.
has been reinforced over your lifetime with the specific experiences you've had. So it makes perfect sense that as entrepreneurs, there are doubts that we have because we've literally been programmed throughout our lives to think differently. And that's why this work is so important because we need to release those old thoughts and start building new ones that actually support us in this new entrepreneurial life.
Totally. Like as you were talking, it made me think a little bit about that validation that I know as a teacher, like kids are constantly looking, am I doing it right? What did I get? What was the mark? Was this good enough? Like we're always looking for that external validation. Did I get the grade that I wanted to? And I think that was one thing that that I have been working through is that I was kind of waiting for someone to say, like, even though I knew consciously no one was going to give me permission, I was still waiting for someone to say, like, oh yeah, you're on the right track, or this is right, or looking for that external validation. But you're not going to necessarily have that as an entrepreneur. You need to fully like trust yourself and move forward without someone's giving you that permission.
And it's so interesting because we know that, like you said, I consciously knew this was,
Consciously, yes.
but subconsciously, and we didn't. And I even as educated as I am, I have a master's degree. I've been always a good student. There's so much that I wasn't aware of before because the job that I had before didn't require it. And
Mm-hmm.
it was entering into the entrepreneurial world where I wanted to start thinking differently for myself, helping the clients that I was working with to have bigger and more successful outcomes when they worked with me. And I couldn't figure out why all of this body of knowledge that I had wasn't enough. And it actually rooted down to the fact that I was there's the subconscious part of my brain that was waiting for, like you said, external validation,
Mm-hmm.
or feeling like I had enough certifications or enough of
Yes.
something external of me to prove that I had finally like been worthy of the business that I'm building. And that's not how it works in entrepreneurship, which is why I think so many of us are here and love this world. But we need to be intentional about how we use our minds and use our subconscious mind specifically to support our business growth.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And because I'd love to make this really tangible for you if you're listening, how about let's talk a little bit about when we think about that subconscious transformation, especially around, because of course, in this podcast, we're talking a lot about productivity and how we're managing our time as business owners because we have so much freedom, but then how do we spend it? How can you know if what's a first clue that something might be blocking us from achieving our goal? Like when we're trying to work on something, what might kind of give us a little like hint that that's happening?
It's going to show up either as like a negative, all that negative voice and noise in your head.
Mm-hmm.
And you think that you're moving in the right direction, right? You know all the strategy, but for some reason, there's this like voice of doubt. And a lot of times it'll be either like frustration or anger or maybe bitterness, something that's like, oh, I do not feel good. And
Mm-hmm.
then your natural response is either, to fight, flight, or freeze, something that's going to just stop everything you're doing. And this is the time when a lot of people will be like, oh, I'm doing something wrong in my business. I don't know what I'm doing. And really, what we need to start thinking like is when you have any sort of negative thought around what you're doing or the direction you're going, it's to start questioning, why am I having this thought?
Mm.
And
And
that is
so not necessarily acting on the thought right away, like, oh, I must need more certification. I must need more information. I must need to learn more. So then I won't have the self-doubt. It's to think, where did this thought even come from before acting on it?
yes, absolutely. And once you do this kind of work long enough, that'll actually start being the default thought you have. So you have to maybe even have a little reminder, a sticky note on your computer monitor or something that helps you become more aware of it, because your historical thought habits, right? Your brain is actually built to keep you safe. So doing anything new or different outside of what you have previously done,
Mm-hmm.
your brain is thinking, oh, this is different. It means danger. And we are trying to now teach our brains that new, different, right? Growth of any kind is not danger. And when it comes to productivity, that means historically you might have been taught, I need to be in school this many hours a day. I need to be at my job for this many hours a
Mm-hmm.
day, right? That has been so deeply rooted into our minds that when we move into entrepreneurship, we're constantly trying to fill hours, but not
Mm-hmm.
intentional of what we're filling those hours with.
Absolutely. Like one mistake that I have seen, and maybe this might be you if you're listening, is this idea of just jumping into the workday and just doing all the things that we need to do, especially as we start to build up our businesses. We need to respond. We need to reply to our clients. We need to build our workshops. We need to market our business. We need to go on Instagram, and all of these to-dos start coming up. But if we're not actually intentional about where we're actually putting our time, it can feel like we're just jumping from thing to thing rather than actually looking at it with a critical lens. And I can imagine on another like level to that is if we're listening to this one voice in our head that maybe is telling us that we're not doing a good enough job or like something's not working, that could really be driving the bus in a way that's not going to align us with where we want to go.
Yes, you are totally right about that.
So say we're working and we start to realize, let's give a more practical example. Like one thing that I hear from my clients is they'll say, I know I need to work, but I just can't focus. So I just can't get productive until later. I can't focus. And we start to recognize that we have that negative feeling that we're starting to feel like uncomfortable for some reason. So instead of acting on it, we stop, we notice, okay, maybe I have a block here. Where's this coming from? Where do we go from here? How can we start to let go of that or kind of look into it? What's the next step?
So this is funny you mentioned this, because this will happen to you at each new like level of your business, or each time that you're trying to do something bigger or different or new. And so this tactic, what I'm going to talk about is important, but I want to make it clear that this is not one thing that you just get over.
Yeah.
The concept with the subconscious mind really is that once you kind of clear away the first layer of sludge, that next level will come up. And I have a little story around this, which is I'm working on creating a new program, and I was having a really hard time outlining what that would look like, because it was an elevated version of something that I've already been doing. And I had a lot of the pieces, but I couldn't put the puzzle together. And I knew that there was something in my, subconscious about it. I was doing all of these different things to try to figure out what that was. And when I finally started to write about it, this is that tangible technique that all of your listeners should do. When I started to write out, why do I think this is not working? What am I afraid will happen if I put this out?
Yeah.
When I tried to write out my program, I would just stare at a blank screen for a while, or little pieces of it would come together, but nothing would feel right. When I started to actually write about the feelings I had around my program and the fears I had around my program, it uncovered something for me from not related to my business, not related to my current life, but for many, many years ago, of this fear of being judged, especially for doing something at this bigger level. And so many of us, when it comes to productivity, we think we're supposed to sit down and just do the thing.
Yeah.
And sometimes we need to think about why we're doing that thing. And that's going to help us focus more, because it will connect to the real reason of why we are doing what we're doing in the first place, and not feeling like, if I don't sit down and just get it all done right away, like, there's something else holding you back. And that's not a function of you not knowing what to do. It's just stuff that's kind of covering up what you really need to do.
I love that, because I think that a lot of us can relate to that. Like, I'm thinking about one client who is saying, oh, I'm not focusing. I'm distracted, but she wants to write a book. Well, she's never written a book before. So when you think about that, that's going to be a level of, like another level of discomfort that we might be coming up against with that belief. And so it manifests itself as, I feel distracted, but really we need to kind of uncover this, like this belief holding us back, and that can let us become more productive.
Yes. And really why you become more productive, sort of the science part of it, is that your brain is no longer using energy to try to like keep that belief hidden.
Yeah.
Once you face it, right, it takes the power away. Your mind also is operating in these three categories of reducing the amount of energy or limiting the amount of energy it puts out, avoiding pain, and then pursuing pleasure. And so if whatever your goal is, your brain perceives as either lots of work, and not that everything has to be a lot of work, but in whatever your experience was, or potentially, right, painful, that's when we need to start figuring out why. Because writing a book is not painful if this is something that you want to do.
Yeah.
But maybe in school you had to write papers about topics you hated, and now you're like, oh, I have to write, and your subconscious mind has this connection that writing is painful. And in another, like in my own example, right, I'm building a program, a new offer. And for me, that connection was, well, in order to put this new thing out there, I'm going to have to be more visible. I'm going to have to talk about something in a new way. And that was rooted all the way back to, right, parts of my childhood and growing up in a family that my family is Polish, and we were the only Polish family, or one of a few Polish families in our community. And so being visible in that way, right, it didn't feel safe because
Mhm.
maybe got made fun of for an accent or something like that. And now rooting it back to my entrepreneurial life, you can see how these previous beliefs, whether that's about writing a book, putting out an offer, how you're spending your time, are not always directly connected to what you're doing today, but asking yourself that question of, why am I having this feeling and what does it connect to from my past? Once you uncover that, it totally takes the power away. And now your brain releases all of this like stuff it's been holding on to and has all this new energy to be working on what you actually are trying to accomplish.
Oh, that is so, so cool, because I teach a lot of like energy and even around decision, like decision fatigue is huge. So how can we reduce the number of decisions that we're making in a day so that we can reserve our most creative energy, like power, brain power, to the things that matter the most in what we're working on in our business. But I never even thought about how our energy is also taken by just having to manage all these different feelings and different beliefs that we're trying to like ignore or not notice, or not that we're not aware of, that might be running the show, and that can take up more energy too. So that is so fascinating.
And I mean, it's the same as, right, you're breathing, you're eating, you're like blinking, all of this is taking energy that you're
Mhm.
not consciously thinking about.
Right.
What we're doing with the subconscious mind as it relates to business, right? There's a lot of thoughts happening back there. There's that we want to release the stuff that's heavy and that's taking up a bunch of energy that's not helping us, and filling it with things that make our goals, the path that we're moving towards, easier.
Awesome. So good. Well, we are about to end on that note, close up the episode. But before we do, I'd love to see, Anna, is there anything that you feel like we haven't really said, or that you think could be a good last kind of thought for the folks listening to close out this episode?
I think if there's anything to leave you all with is to recognize that each new level of your business, of your life and your business, is going to require a new version of you.
Mm-hmm.
And that version comes from learning new skills, but also transforming the way that your mind thinks.
Yeah.
And if you can truly embrace that, knowing that you have to think a different way to get to the next level, then a lot of the skill set, that's easier to get. But working on your mindset, that you have to intentionally choose to do. So I would encourage everyone to have some sort of mindset development practice as part of their entrepreneurial journey, because you're going to have new things come up at each new level.
Yeah, and I really like that, because I don't know about you if you're listening, but for me, I like to be very productive, and I like to have something I've accomplished. And sometimes mindset, like even today, I was in a mindset call with my own coach, and I was like, maybe I should get off the mindset call and I should do my work. Like it felt like I wasn't actually working, but I love the way that you phrase that, that really this is part of the work. Like it's part of being productive, is that mindset work, because that's what's going to allow you to move forward. If you're always in the doing and the quote unquote traditional productivity, you're not going to be able to go as far without doing that mindset work.
You've got it.
So thank you, Anna, so much for coming on the podcast. It was wonderful having you. Let us know, where can we find out more about you if we want to connect with you after the podcast.
Well, I am all over Instagram.
Mhm.
My handle is I am Anna Nichols, and you can find me there and send me a DM if you're interested. And I've got a free PDF of uncovering your mindset blocks. It's 5 journal prompts that are super powerful. I get tons of great feedback about this. So it's something, if anyone's interested, easy way to get started on uncovering those blocks.
Awesome. Well, we will make sure to link all those links up in the show notes so that you can discover them later. That was awesome. And I think having a little tool like that to help you uncover them, because they're often quite hidden to you on your conscious level. So thank you so much, Anna, for coming today.
Thanks for having me.